So very good morning to all of you. Today's lecture is on properties of synapse. In the last two lectures, we have seen in the introduction to nervous system and what is meant by synapse. Okay, so let us revise the previous lecture. That is synapse. What is the structure of synapse, types of synapse, inhibition, excitation, and synaptic transmission. So what exactly you should know in the previous lecture? That means mechanism of synaptic transmission. I will explain with the flow chart. So first is initiation of action potential at the axon hillock. That action potential reaches at the presynaptic terminal. Then because of that, there is an entry of calcium or opening of that particular calcium, integrated calcium channels, entry of calcium into the presynaptic terminal, which will lead to the fusion of vesicles and which will lead to the release of neurotransmitter by process called as exocytosis. And that neurotransmitter once released bind to the postsynaptic receptor. And then depending on whether the ion cation channels or ion channels or second messenger system, the further action take place. That is how the postsynaptic membrane will activate the particular action potential in that particular membrane. Okay, either inhibitory or excitatory. So this is a synaptic transmission, basic mechanism of synaptic transmission. Now, what are the properties of synapse? First is one-way conduction or law of, or it is also called as law of forward conduction. Okay, now what is that law of forward conduction? Before that, these are the different properties, that is a synaptic delay, synaptic fatigue, synaptic inhibition, convergence and divergence, summation, that is spatial or temporal summation, occlusion, subliminal fringe, and synaptic plasticity. Now, what is this law of forward conduction, or also called as one-way conduction? That means impulse. What are the impulse arising from that presynaptic terminal? It will always travels toward the postsynaptic neuron. That is always toward the direction is only toward the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, that is called as one-way conduction, and this is very helpful for to achieve that particular response and carrying out the complex function of the central nervous system. That is called as one-way conduction. Okay, synaptic delay, that is when that particular presynaptic terminal activate or impulses arises at the postsynaptic membrane, it will take a time to activate to produce that particular response. Okay, so it is mainly minimum of 0.5 millisecond delay is there at the presynaptic to the postsynaptic membrane. And what is the cause? The time taken for a release of neurotransmitter from the presynaptic terminal in the vesicles, then for diffusion of neurotransmitter through the synaptic cleft, time taken by that particular process, then time taken by the binding of neurotransmitter to the receptor, and diffusion of ions causing various changes, either cationic ion, then anionic ions, and second messenger system. Okay, so these are the different causes of synaptic delay. Now, what is significance of this? It is helpful for to calculate the number of synapses involved. Okay, suppose for example, number of synapses is suppose their reflex time is around 10 milliseconds for that particular response. So how to calculate the number of synapses involved in that particular process? Reflex time divided by minimum time, that is 0.5 millisecond. Okay, so this is formula for to calculating the number of synapses. Now, what is fatigue? Third property, when synapses are stimulated repeatedly at a rapid rate, at that time there is a no response at that particular postsynaptic neuron. So why it happens? Because of exhaustion of the neurotransmitter, acclimation of the some waste products like H+ and lactic acid, then refractoriness of that particular postsynaptic membrane, progressive inactivation of various receptor on the postsynaptic neuron, and slow buildup of calcium ions. That means slow entry of calcium ion from the synaptic cleft into the presynaptic membrane. And this is a temporary phenomena. Okay, after some time, again that particular response will happen. Okay, so mainly the exhaustion of the neurotransmitter and acclimation of the waste products. This is the main cause of the fatigue. Fourth is inhibition. Different mechanisms of inhibitions are postsynaptic, when the inhibition is at the postsynaptic junction, when the inhibition at the presynaptic membrane, that is called presynaptic inhibition, recurrent inhibition because of activation of the some cells, that is called as Renshaw cells, and feed forward inhibition. So let us see what is the first postsynaptic inhibition. it is our two types, that is a direct and indirect postsynaptic inhibition. Now here it is because of due to presence of inhibitory postsynaptic potential in the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, that means release of inhibitory neurotransmitter, which will lead to the direct inhibition of that particular postsynaptic membrane. That is called as direct type of postsynaptic inhibition. Now here, in the presynaptic indirect type of postsynaptic inhibition, it is due to previous postsynaptic neuron discharges. That means when you repeatedly give a stimulus and that repeated second stimulus will fall in the absolute refractory period. You know what is meant by refractory period? In the neuromuscle lecture, we have already seen the what is mean by absolute and relative refractory period. So when the second stimulus or consecutive stimulus fall in the absolute refractory period, at that time there's a no response. That is called as indirect type of inhibition. Okay. Now, presynaptic inhibition, it is mainly because of axonal synapse. Okay, it is mainly because of axonal synapse. When that particular presynaptic terminal is inhibited by the axon of another presynaptic membrane, axon of another presynaptic membrane, that is called as axon. Suppose in this diagram, this A is stimulate the B neuron, but here C1 is axon of C1 will inhibit the axon of this A. Okay, that is called as axonal synapse. So why they inhibit? What is the ionic basis of this? It is because of increased chloride conduction. That means entry of chloride from the ECF to the in that particular neuron cell body. Opening of voltage gated potassium channels, which again decreases the calcium influx, and direct inhibition of transmitter released by independent of any calcium influx. Okay, so this is called as presynaptic inhibition. Inhibition by because of some axon of another neuron which release the inhibitory neurotransmitter, and that inhibitory neurotransmitter is work under this particular ionic channels. Okay. Then negative feedback inhibition. Negative feedback inhibition. Now here, the axons of spinal motor neuron give a recurrent collateral synapse with the inhibitory interneuron. And that recurrent collateral synapse is called as Renshaw cell. Okay. Now, with the diagram, I will explain this. Now, this mechanism is mainly present in the spinal motor neuron and in the cerebral cortex and the limbic system. Okay. Alpha motor neurons of the spinal cord. And it mainly release the GABA, that is a gamma aminobutyric acid inhibiting neurotransmitter. Now, what is that negative feedback inhibition? With this diagram, you can see that suppose this particular neuron activate the one of the particular postsynaptic membrane, but when that particular neuron send the excitatory signal to the particular postsynaptic neuron, it will also excite the particular inhibitory interneuron, recurrent cell, that is Renshaw cell. And what is the function of that inhibitory interneuron or Renshaw cell? It will inhibit its own that particular the neuron which activate the particular postsynaptic membrane, and that's why it's called as negative feedback inhibition. That means the neuron which activate the postsynaptic membrane of another neuron, it is inhibited by the because of activation of this inhibitory interneuron. Okay, which we in turn inhibit that particular presynaptic neuron or that particular neuron. Okay, that is called as Renshaw cell inhibition, also called as negative feedback inhibition. Now, what is a feed-forward inhibition? Now, this kind of inhibition is mainly present in the cerebellum. Now, these are the different cells present in the cerebellum. PC is Purkinje cells, BC is basket cell, granular cells, and Golgi cells. Now, this PC and BC, that is basket cell and Purkinje cells, are excited by the same input from the cerebellum. But what is the main thing? This basket cell in turn inhibit the Purkinje cells, and that is called as feed-forward inhibition. Okay, it is not feedback; it is feed-forward inhibition. Now, divergence and convergence. Now, in this diagram, you can see that convergence is nothing but when that particular input, multiple inputs excite the single postsynaptic neuron, that is called as convergence. Okay. So many presynaptic neurons with single activation of that postsynaptic neuron, that is called as convergence. Now what is divergence? Opposite to that convergence, single input, single presynaptic neuron activate the multiple postsynaptic neuron, that is called as divergence. And this kind of system is mainly present in alpha motor neurons of the spinal cord. Okay. Then summation, you know that there are two types of summation, spatial summation and temporal summation. What is the cause of spatial summation? It is nothing but the when you activate the multiple presynaptic fiber at the same time, you will get a maximum response. That is called as spatial summation. Then what is temporal summation? When you activate the same nerve fibers at a multiple time, you get response that is called as temporal summation. Okay. In this diagram, you can also, we have already seen in this diagram in the second lecture of the synapse. That is, in the first diagram, when you give a single stimulus, you get this kind of response, the PSP, excitative postsynaptic potential. Spatial summation, when you stimulate multiple nerve fibers at the same time, we get this kind of response, that is called spatial summation. While here, when you stimulate the single neuron at multiple points, repeatedly, at that time we get this temporal kind of summation. Okay. Now what is subliminal fringe? Subthreshold, then fringe means border. Okay. So subliminal fringe. Now I will explain this with the help of one diagram so that you can understand that what is meant by subliminal fringe. Before that, you should know what is meant by subthreshold. In the lectures of nerve and muscle, we have seen the properties of the nerve. That is, what is threshold stimulus, what is subthreshold stimulus, what is maximum stimulus, supramaximal stimulus. Okay. Threshold stimulus means the minimum strength of stimulus required to initiate a response. That is called as threshold stimulus. Okay. Subthreshold means the below the threshold. When you apply that particular subthreshold stimulus, there's a no response. Okay. So same thing, what is subliminal fringe? With this diagram, you can see that is one of the particular different neurons. When you give stimulate the A kind of A, at that time there is an activation of the 3 neurons. Okay. When you activate this B, there is activation of this 3 neurons. When you activate the separately A and B, there is activation of the 3 neurons. When A stimulates, when there is activation of the B, there is a activation of the 3 neurons. But when you stimulate this A, there is also the subthreshold stimulus reach at that particular 6 neurons. That means there is no response because of subthreshold stimulus when you activate separately A and B. A and B activate the 3 and 3, but there is that subthreshold stimulus reaches at this particular 6 neurons. Okay. But when we simultaneously activate A and B, because of subthreshold stimulus of both A and B, it will activate that means that subthreshold stimulus reaches at the threshold levels and it will activate these 6 neurons also. Okay. That means A plus B activate the 12 types of neurons. This 3 and 3 plus 6 neurons. Okay. That means response is maximum. Okay. That means subliminal effect is present on this 6 motor neurons. Okay. But when we stimulate separately A and B, it will not activate these 6 neurons because there is a subthreshold stimulus. There is subliminal stimulus. Okay. So, but when we activate this A and B simultaneously, it will activate this 6 plus 3, 3. That is 12 neurons. Okay. So this subliminal effect is present on this 6 type of motor neuron. That is called as subliminal effect. Now, opposite to that, you have occlusion. Again, I will explain with the diagram what is occlusion. It is exactly opposite to the subliminal effect. It is because of sharing of that particular neurons. Okay. Now here, when you activate, these are the A and B. When you activate the A, it will activate the 9 neurons. This 3 and this 6. When you activate the separately B, it will activate again 9 neurons. These 3 plus this 6. Now these 6 are common. Okay. When you activate A, these 6 are also activated. When you activate this B, these 6 are also get activated. Okay. But when you combinely stimulate the A and B simultaneously, at that time, you will get a response. That means 3 plus 6 plus 3. That means 12. Okay. That means why this happens? Because of sharing of these 6 neurons. That means activation of the 6 neurons by A and B simultaneously. When we activate separately also and simultaneously also. Okay. That means because of sharing of this neuron, and that is called as occlusion phenomena. Okay. Last one is synaptic plasticity. Now, what is synaptic plasticity? It is nothing but the capability of being easily molded or changed. Now, this happens because of basis of either increase or decrease conduction on the basis of past experience. Okay, that is called as synaptic plasticity, and it is helpful for the in the process of learning and memory. And it can be at the presynaptic membrane or the postsynaptic membrane. What are the different mechanisms of that that is a synaptic plasticity? First mechanism is post-tetanic potentiation. Sensitization is mainly present on the presynaptic membrane. Long-term potentiation, habituation, same as that of fatigue, and the long-term depression. These are the different mechanisms of synaptic plasticity. Now let us see one by one. What is postsynaptic potentiation? When a brief glutamatergic stimuli is applied in the presynaptic neurons, which results in the production of postsynaptic potential, which is lasting for the minutes to hour. Okay, and what is the mechanism of that postsynaptic potential? Is nothing but the accumulation of calcium ion in the postsynaptic neurons, which causes the release of the neurotransmitter. Okay, that is called as post-tetanic potentiation. Now, what is long-term potentiation? When you apply that post-tetanic potentiation for a long time, it will lead to the long-term potentiation. So what is main difference between the post-tetanic potentiation and long-term potentiation? In the post-tetanic potentiation, there is a cause is entry of calcium in the presynaptic membrane. Okay, while here in the long-term potentiation, because of long stimulation of that presynaptic long post-tetanic potentiation, there is a cause is mainly because of entry of calcium ion, increase in the intracellular calcium in the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, this is the cause of long-term potentiation, and this is mainly present in this mechanism is mainly present in hippocampus of the brain. Okay, this is called as long-term potentiation. Cause of postsynaptic potentiation is entry of calcium in the postsynaptic membrane, while in the long-term potentiation, there's an entry of calcium or increase the intracellular calcium in the postsynaptic membrane. Okay, or postsynaptic neuron. Now, what is sensitization? The mechanism of sensitization is mainly present in the presynaptic membrane, and it is mainly for the short-term and long-term memory. When a non-noxious stimulus is paired with a noxious stimulus, at that time, there is a sensitization of that particular presynaptic neuron take place because of presence of some ones. Suppose there are two types of stimulus. So the one type of stimulus is activate the because of presence of the second stimulus, one kind of stimulus get activated. Okay, that is cause of sensitization. Okay. So suppose, for example, when you when particular exam is there, and suppose teacher will announce that particular when the three students when the three students get maximum mark, we will give us some trophy. Okay, so this is a fun kind of stimulus, so that there's a active there's a sensitization of that particular students. Okay, so this is called as when a noxious stimulus is paired with a non-noxious stimulus is paired with a noxious stimulus. Okay, that is a sensitization, and it is helpful for short-term and long-term memory. And what is the mechanism? In short term, for short term, it decreases in the cyclic AMP. Long term is protein synthesis, increase the protein synthesis and growth of presynaptic neuron and the postsynaptic neuron and their connections. Okay, so these are the mechanisms which are present in the short term and long term memory. Again, in the lectures of memory, you will again same thing you will again see in that particular lectures of memory. What is the mechanisms of short term and long term memory? It is nothing but the sensitization. Okay, in short term memory we have increased cyclic AMP. In long term memory you have increased protein synthesis and growth of presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons. Fourth mechanism, that is a habituation. Same thing for like the fatigue. When you stimulate that particular neuron repeatedly again and again, the response gradually disappears. And it is because of gradual inactivation of calcium channels, so that there is no calcium is available for the fusion of the vesicles. So there is a no release of the neurotransmitter and no response. Okay, that is called habituation. Long-term diffraction. Opposite to the long-term potentiation, we have long-term diffraction. It is because of slower stimulation of the presynaptic neuron. And this mechanism is mainly present in the cerebellum. Because of slow stimulation, there is no calcium influx, there is no release of neurotransmitter, which will lead to the long-term diffraction. Okay, so these are the mechanisms, these are the different properties of synapse. The first property is one-way conduction, that means forward conduction. Second is fatigue. Then third is summation, that is a spatial summation, then temporal summation. Then we have occlusion, subliminal fringe, plasticity, okay, synaptic plasticity. So we have long answer question, define synapse and describe its properties with the help of examples. Okay, this is a long answer question for you. Some short answer question, give physiological basis of following properties of synapse. What is the ionic basis and physiological basis? What is fatigue? Why fatigue is occur? What is the cause of spatial summation and temporal summation? And what are the different mechanisms of synaptic plasticity? Just now I explained different mechanisms of synaptic plasticity. Some MCQs, Renshaw cell inhibition is a typical example of presynaptic inhibition, direct inhibition, recurrent inhibition, all of the above. So you have to find out this answer. Following is not a property at the synapse. All or none law, one-way conduction, fatigue, and occlusion. So you have to find out this answer. So this is about the today's lecture. And in the next lecture, we will see what are different neurotransmitters and what is the sensory receptors present in our nervous systems. Okay, so just revise this today's lecture and solve these questions. Thank you.